welcome today to today's AGI Heads and Chairs webinar. We're going to be doing this as a panel and hopefully a community discussion. So we really are looking forward to the second half of the hour, everyone contributing and being part of a broader conversation. So a few quick introductions. Online with us here is Pranoti Asher, Assistant Director of Grants and Education Programs at AGU. Eva Kostiu, who is Program Manager of the AGU Bridge Program. Myself, Christopher Keene, I'm with AGI, Director of Geoscience Professional Higher Ed, and Leila Gonzalez from AGI as well is here, and she's coordinating everything in the background. And of course, we have our two panelists today, Cynthia Liutkus and Steve Holbrook, who we'll give a bigger introduction to in a moment. So today's webinar, Exploring Successes in Strengthening Enrollment and Managing Administrative Expectations. As I mentioned, we're hoping for a panel and community discussion. This is always a persistent issue for the geosciences, but I think there are quite a few success stories out there, and that's what we want to build from in this conversation. And it's my pleasure that we have Steve Holbrook, who is Professor and Head of Geosciences at Virginia Tech, and Cynthia Liutkus, who is Professor and Chair of the Department of Geological Environmental Sciences at Appalachian State University. These are two programs that particularly in our data collection continue to show up as shining stars and are very vibrant and thriving and would like to understand their magic sauce. Real quickly, I just have two data slides I just want to set as a broad context at the national level. So this is the most recent enrollment data, and perhaps surprisingly for everyone, last year we saw a pretty sharp increase in rebound in enrollments coming out of the pandemic. The exact dynamics of this are a little hard to judge, but I will say that for every department that reported a drop in enrollment, we saw two that reported some increases. And we had a bunch of programs that reported very large increases in enrollment. It is a little bit of a question in our mind whether or not this is a dead cat bounce with students that had sort of faded out of academia, out of their schooling, and have come back in now that the pandemic is sort of behind functionally for most folks, or is this actually a sustained rebound? There are certainly lots of discussions about enrollment preferences towards STEM fields, things like that, but obviously part of the pause here too is the fact that we still continue to see pressure on our graduate enrollment. So we'll hopefully get a better, clear view of what's happening over the next year or two. But regardless, I think we all feel strongly we can continue to strengthen our student bodies. And just to add context, I know lots of folks talk about the enrollment cliff, but really what does that look like? So when we look at college age populations, one of the nicest ways to do it is to look over the whole area. You can see to the right, there's the baby boomers. They push through basically in the population, Gen X, the baby bust. And we all certainly know that universities went through a rather austere time in the late 80s and early 90s because of the drops in enrollment and the constraint. But the millennials, where we are with academia today is on the strength of the growth of college enrollment by millennials. But now when we look ahead, there's no growth. If anything, there's a decline in the population of to-be traditional college age students. So that's why everyone's worried about enrollment, but I think it's one of those key issues that there is a population there, but it's about us being competitive. I think we have a pretty good story to tell, and that's what I'm hoping that we can have that conversation about how to really sell the great opportunities that our discipline has. And with that, I would like to turn this over to Cindy to talk about her program.
Thanks so much, Chris. And again, thanks for inviting me. This is kind of a really great opportunity. It's always nice when AGI reaches out and says, hey, you're doing really well, and we'd like to actually talk to you about what's successful in your department. So thanks for having me again. And I'm really pleased to see so many people here. This is great. Just wanted to start with just a couple of minutes just to give you all a bit of an introduction to who we are here at Appalachian State. So we're in Western North Carolina. We're up in the mountains. So we did already have snow this season. But we are one of many departments within the College of Arts and Sciences. We're one of 17. And in terms of just thinking about the size of App State, we're 21,000-ish strong students right now. That's just our fall 2023 enrollment. And our enrollment is actually doing pretty well overall. That's up about 4% since last year. So as I mentioned, we're just one of 17 departments in the College of Arts and Sciences, but we're kind of a moderately sized department, at least for here at App State. We have 14 tenure track faculty members, and we just got some good news last week that we are going to get 2, not just 1 now, we're going to get 2 new tenure track lines, which is really exciting in the coming year. And also we have 7 non-tenure track faculty. And again, because we're doing so well, and I'll talk about our growth in a minute, we're also going to add at least 1 non-tenure track faculty member to that in the coming year too. So some of the added benefits of growth is certainly that we are getting some help from the upper administration, which is great. So we're an undergraduate only blended department of geology and environmental science. And so just as of yesterday, we are at 346, I think, something like that, majors. And we have 8 different degree tracks here. And so you can see the breakdown in the middle of the slide here that we're about 214 E&V majors and 133 geology. And so, like I said, these are undergraduate only. So we don't have a graduate program. And so a lot of our well, I should say our whole emphasis or our whole focus is really on undergraduate education. And App State has its roots as a teaching school anyway. So over the last decade or so, and I'll show you in a minute the slide that shows kind of our growth, we've seen just for the last couple of years a pretty nice sustained growth, anywhere between maybe 5 and 10% in the number of majors that are enrolled in GES degrees. But very interestingly enough, in the last year, we've had almost a 20% growth. And we are certainly thankful for that, but we are also, of course, feeling some of those growing pains as there is that lag, of course, before we get the help and the positions and the whatever else, we are actually bursting at the seams in terms of our students. So I'll show you some of the data that goes along with this. So what I've shown here is just the GES majors by track over the last 11 years. So the blue line in the middle is total GES majors since fall of 2012. And then I just decided below that in the blue and the light blue and the green lines to show you based on their general degree track choice. So you'll see that the light blue line is our geology majors proper. And so since fall 2012, we've kind of had sustained growth quite nicely, but slow, but steady. And then a dip, of course, right in the COVID years, but we are seeing a nice rebound to that too. And then the green line is our environmental science majors. There's a very important change that happened in our department in the fall of 2017. Environmental science was a program at App State, and we blended it into our department in 2017. And so it kind of struggled a little bit as a fledgling program that really didn't have a home. And then in 2017, when we took it over, it just really started to blossom. And so we've seen a really exponential increase in the number of majors we've had in environmental science. The gray dash line is the AGI data that Chris was nice enough to share with us about US enrollments. And so we're kind of doing pretty well, I think, despite some pretty dramatic changes in total geoscience enrollment across the country. I think App State GES is doing pretty well in terms of both geology and environmental science students. I'll just kind of go over just a couple of things that we've had a lot of success with. And I guess I'll just preface this by mentioning that not everything that has been helpful or successful for us may be helpful or successful for everyone on this call. But hopefully that if you see some similarities, these might be ways that can help with enrollment, help with recruitment and retention, but also in dealing with the opportunities. I won't say challenges, but opportunities with upper administration. So yeah, we've really been very supportive or supported rather by our upper administration. That hasn't always been the case. In fact, about 10 years ago, we had a provost that just did not like geosciences and thought that it would potentially be the one science that you could graduate with an undergraduate degree and not have to take one in college. And so we were certainly in peril there of going away. But I think that some of the other things here that we've done well is to really make sure that the message that we send to upper administration is that we are doing really well. Our students are growing, our faculty are really productive and all of that. And one thing that we also monopolized on is when the environmental science program came open, we were ready to seize that opportunity. We had a white paper ready to go and we were ready to take that program on. So when the programs or the positions pop up, we're kind of ready there with our data. We've been trying really hard to keep our curricula current, doing a lot of analysis of what do our students need in order to be successful post-graduation. and making sure that even though there's a lot of work involved in revamping our degree tracks, we try to do it every couple of years just to make sure that things are current and better preparing and best preparing our students for jobs after. One thing that has been really challenging for us is about these appropriate comparisons and knowing where our data come from. A lot of times we are compared to programs that either have graduate programs, have engineering rolled in with geology, have geography rolled in with geology. And so it is really important that when we do talk to upper administration or university leadership, we remind them that maybe those aren't appropriate comparisons. And so we really need to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. Another thing too is we've been really trying hard to make sure that as the strategic plan of the university and the college changes, we see our place in that, and we really are making sure that we have the data and the information at our fingertips to make sure that we know our place, but also that they see our place in the future of the university as well as the college. And the last thing I'll say too, I was going to talk a little bit about making sure that we keep morale up in the department, but I think it's a bigger issue of making sure that you celebrate success, not only within the department. We've been really good at making sure that we celebrate when our faculty members are doing really well, but we do a lot of outreach. We make sure that we are bringing GES to Western North Carolina, and now we're actually expanding across the state too, to just really show folks what we're doing and being kind of shameless promoters, I guess, of our program, but not be afraid to kind of highlight where there are challenges and where there would be opportunities for better growth. So with that, I'll just kind of take a step back and happy to answer questions when we get there. But yeah, a little bit about GES. Thanks.
Steve, if you can fill us in on your program.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm very pleased to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Chris and Leela, and I'm really pleased to be sharing a stage with Cynthia. I'm an admirer of that program, and we get some great graduate students from App State. They're just down the road from us, couple hours. So yeah, I'm going to make this similarly quick. I'll just point out, so I didn't make a slide with facts about Virginia Tech or our department, but I'll just point out that our logo on the bottom left there, the 6 icons around the globe there are the 6 options that we have in our major. So we grant one undergraduate degree, a BS in geoscience, and that has 6 options that have slightly different. They have a common core of classes, but then different pathways through the degree. And starting on the bottom left and going clockwise, it's geology, geochemistry, geophysics, paleobiology/paleontology, environmental and engineering, geoscience, and earth science education. So that's what our degree looks like. So this was the enrollment data as of, really as of a couple of weeks ago that we were aware of. And I will tell you that for the last couple of years, my department has been saying, well, we must have really figured something out because we have decoupled from the national trend, this national downward trend. So yeah, at this point, we thought we were doing something uniquely right. But then when Chris shared the new data, so our enrollments have continued to go up. This adds another year to both data sets. But now to my eye, this just looks to me like for some reason, Virginia Tech is a leading indicator. We're ahead of the national trends by a year. If you shift our curve over to the right by 1 year, it's almost a perfect match. I have no idea why we would be leading it or if there's something in the data there. But I say caveat emptor because and one of the themes that I'll have in this is, you can do a lot of things as we have done to try to grow your program, but it's hard to know what's working. And maybe we're just passively riding some kind of national trend or leading it slightly. So that's the caveat. So our approach for the last, and I came to Virginia Tech a little more than 6 years ago I was hired in as department head. And our approach in increasing our enrollments has been this old adage, nothing will work, but everything might. So we do a lot. A couple of caveats here, and Cindy said this, and I want to reiterate it. Every department, every college, every university is going to have its unique opportunities and contexts. And so I don't want to suggest that everything that's working for us is going to work for everyone. In fact, I know we've got some unique advantages at Virginia Tech. It's been a good time to be at Virginia Tech for the last 6 years. So, so I don't want to suggest that we understand how you all can make this work at your place, but hopefully there'll be something of value here. The other caveat is when you do change a lot of things, as we have, it's really kind of impossible to know which of the things worked. We're not conducting controlled experiments here. We're not just holding everything constant and then changing curriculum and then watching that for a few years, et cetera. We kind of did everything that we thought would work at the same time. So it's hard to know, it's hard to assess relative proportions of gain to each of those things. Okay, and I think it's also kind of important to remember that when we're talking about enrollment, there's really two aspects of that. One is recruitment and the other is retention, right? This is pretty obvious, but we've really put effort into both sides of this coin. Both, you know, we want to draw students into our program, and we also want to make sure that they have a good experience and that they stay in our program. So on the recruitment actions, I think this was really important. I think a sort of intellectual or strategic shift that we undertook in our department. And I think like many departments that have undergraduate and graduate programs, we approached recruiting completely differently at those two levels. And our recruiting for our graduate program, we controlled it. We get the applications. We decide who comes. We put a lot of time and resources and energy, and we fly people in and do all that stuff to really work hard at that. And at the undergraduate level, I think it's fair to say, certainly in my last institution and before I got to Virginia Tech, it was much more passive. It's just, well, you know, we don't control that. It's over in the admissions office, and we have no say in how this works. And whoever shows up, that's great. We'll take them. That's, you know, happy that you're here. But we decided to start becoming active in this in every way that we could think of. So here are a few things that we did. And the first thing was we did a strategic planning exercise when I arrived, and we set as a really important strategic objective that we needed to increase our undergraduate enrollment because it had been declining, as you saw in that graph, and was becoming a problem, I think, for us with the administration. We also underwent a major revision to our undergraduate curriculum. I'll have more to say about that in a second. We hired an academic advisor / enrollment manager, and that is her title. She's the academic advisor and enrollment manager. So we wanted to foreground that enrollment management part of her job in that. She's fantastic and may be the secret to our success in many ways. We focus a lot of attention on recruiting events, you know, majors, fairs, Hokie Focus, open house weekends when parents come. And we really make sure that our current students are participating in that. You know, we talked about this. I send out a weekly email to everyone in the department, undergraduates, grad students, faculty, staff. And the first section of that email every week is kudos. And we put pictures in of people who are at the booth and name them by name and really try to, and this echoes something else that Cynthia said, right? You really want to praise people and for when they're doing things that are aligned with your strategic goals. We also, one of the active aspects, and Cindy said this too, you need to really communicate with all the people who do make the decisions for undergraduate admissions. Let them know that we wanted to grow. We had capacity to grow. We think we have a good program, and we needed to make. So we met with people in the admissions office. We got our associate dean for undergraduate affairs on board with our desire, and our dean on board with our desire to grow, so that they could advocate for us through every stage of the process. A small thing that I do, but I know it matters in some individual cases, and everyone knows in the department that if we have visiting high school students, they often come in the spring with their parents. Maybe they've just been admitted, they're deciding where they want to go. I personally, as department head, make it known I want to sit down with them for half an hour, this prospective student and their parents, and talk to them about our program. And sometimes those personal touches really matter. I think that our curriculum revision also really helped. It helped both in the recruitment and in the retention part of this. We realized when I arrived, the curriculum looked a whole lot like the curriculum I had 30 years prior when I was an undergrad. Very rigorous curriculum designed to prepare students for graduate school, and did a very good job at that. But an analysis of our data showed that only about a third of our undergraduates go immediately to grad school. So one way to look at that is our curriculum was really designed to serve a third of our students, and the 2/3 that wanted to go work, maybe not so much. So we did a lot of things with this revision that I won't go into. That's a whole other topic. But two things that I think are relevant to this enrollment discussion. One, we added 2 new options that were in high demand areas / areas that we thought we had strengths in: paleobiology / paleontology. We've got a fantastic, really internationally known group there. And then in environmental and engineering geoscience. And those are our 2 fastest growing options. So they are definitely a part of our growth. I don't know how many of those students would have gone into other options in our major if we didn't have those, but I'm sure that some of that growth is new because we have those options. The other thing we did, and this was controversial for a while, but we realized that we were losing a lot of students who I think could have gone on to successful careers as geoscientists because of the math and physics requirements, and they were having difficulty with those. So we increased the flexibility and tried to make the math and physics requirements, which still exist, but there are, probably this is similar in many places, there are sort of 2 pathways. There's the hard sort of engineering calculus and physics course, and then there's the somewhat less rigorous track in math and physics. And we decided that for 3 of our options, for geophysics, for engineering, geoscience, for geochemistry, we had to keep requiring the engineering style math and physics. But for the other 3 options, even though we recommend them, we're okay if they take the other path. So we are meeting the students where they are. I think this has helped us, it helps us to retain our students. We were losing them to environmental science, which at Virginia Tech is in a different college, so that's a loss to us. So I think those were really important changes. 2 process notes if you do curriculum revision. This was a faculty-wide effort, very broad participation, working groups. Virtually every faculty member was involved in this, and it was really important to identify someone to take charge of this. And for us, that was Maddie Schreiber, our associate department head. And this is my last slide. So just some things we do in terms of retention, how do we make for a good student experience in our department. So one thing that's really important, and even with all the space pressures we're under as we're growing and growing as a faculty as well, is I have kept a room that is a dedicated undergraduate student lounge. That's a picture of it on the bottom left there. It's a nice room. It's got big windows, and you walk by there. There were only 3 students when I took this picture the other day, but usually there's 10, 12, 15 students. There's comfy chairs. There's people in there doing their homework sets together at the conference style tables. And this is something that we can also then promote when we're trying to, when we're talking to students about why they should come here. We do every Tuesday. This is something that our enrollment manager has developed. Geos Tuesday events. This is part of the culture. Every Tuesday from 5 to 6, there's some event for our undergraduates that is some kind of professional development event. Next Tuesday, it's going to be about the professional geologist certification. What do they have to do? We might do one on HAZWOPER. We do things on a course request. We do things on mentoring. Lots of different things, but that happens every week, so that's part of the culture. Our advising team meets personally with every one of our students every semester. We do grad student mentoring. They get mentored in a number of ways. The picture on the bottom right is a sort of speed dating around the inside of those tables are undergraduates. Around the outside are grad students who have signed up to be mentors. And every couple of minutes, a bell would ring, and the undergraduates would rotate, talk to another grad student, and they would sort of find a match for someone that they wanted to be their mentor. And so they get an official mentor that way. We do that every fall. We also have started a peer mentoring program for undergraduates within the undergraduate crew. We have an alumni mentoring program. We do a dedicated study abroad that fits into their program every fall. It's a whole semester in Switzerland. That's a photo in the bottom center there of some of our students in Switzerland. We emphasize on undergraduate research, very active student clubs, faculty career advising, and then geoscience ambassadors. When students help us out with events, they get one of these highly coveted VT Geoscience North Face jackets. So we do a lot of branding to sort of build an esprit de corps as well. And so that is all I have, and I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Great. Thanks both of you for a terrific presentation. And what I think we'll do, we'll go ahead and move into the panel session, and we can sort of open it up for conversation and questions on your guys' presentations. I really appreciate them. I think those are good overviews. So I have a couple questions to sort of start the conversation. both of you talked about some of the strategic thinking that you had. Can you talk about the underlying strategic motivations for what you've been doing with your program, but how that relates to your institution's strategy? And was it bucking a trend? Were you building on that? Was it agnostic of it? And how has that helped or hindered what you think is the progress that you feel is needed in your program? So, Cindy, would you care to comment?
Happy to. Thanks, Chris. So we have always kind of been, I guess they call us the green campus of the UNC system. So App State is one of many schools within the University of North Carolina system. And I guess location certainly helps, but we've always been kind of that kind of green-minded, environmentally minded campus throughout UNC. And that was certainly strategic on our part when we were able to kind of blend geoscience with environmental science. We definitely wanted to make sure that we monopolized on that. We're noticing that the strategic plan is certainly leaning towards a lot of climate sciences, sustainability, and being good global scientists. And so we're certainly making sure that it's known that geoscience is certainly, it's a global science, right? It's everywhere. Geoscientists are needed everywhere. So making sure that we kind of make those connections, absolutely, to not only what are the strengths of the university, right? We've already got that kind of like-minded, environmentally conscious student coming here, but then also to making sure that that fits in with strategic planning and clearly sending that message to the upper administration.
But how about you, Steve?
Yeah, I think it's really important, and it's and Cindy mentioned this in her slides as well, that you really do have to pay attention to the strategic plans of the units that you're in and the directions that places are going. For us, that plays out in a couple of ways, and I guess I should just sort of admit at the outset that the reason that our department has 34 faculty, even though 5 years ago we only had 65 undergraduate majors, is because we're a very research active department. We have 3 National Academy members, lots of award winners, lots of research activity and grants and nature papers and things like that. That is how we pitch ourselves. So we're not worried about existing. For us, the enrollment decline that we were seeing at the undergraduate level was becoming an impediment. Wasn't becoming, I think, an existential threat in the sense that we were worried about going away, but we were worried about keeping our numbers and growing. And so it was definitely important for us in our strategic planning to be on the research side, in sync with what was happening at the institution. In terms of the undergraduate experience side, though, it's been 2 real important initiatives at Virginia Tech over the past 5-6 years have been study abroad and an experiential learning, and study abroad is part of that. And so that was someplace that we realized, okay, we can really capitalize on the things that we're already doing to tell our story with the upper administration and make them aware of the value of what we do. Even if we don't have the numbers of a biology department or a mechanical engineering department, that the quality of the experience that we offer is really high. And that was something that the administration was talking a lot about.
It's a great point, Steve, and Cindy, from your perspective, I think, how do you, because we've had a number of departments, some of the largest ones, saying they're being hammered by their, the institution level leadership, not even necessarily their dean, but higher up, because of that size difference. So clearly there's a strategy there, for Steve at Virginia Tech. I mean, how do you sort of fit within that? Recognizing you're one of the largest programs in geo in the country, but maybe not, say compared to the business school or something like that. How does that communication work with your senior leadership? And is that something that's done at the department level, the dean?
Is that for me, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, it is something that has in the past been at the dean's level, right? We always start with that, making sure that as Steve was saying, celebrating those successes, sending those things up, publication record and all of that sort of thing. Really, faculty are doing really well. But then also kind of not being afraid to kind of write up that little blurb, that little white paper that you can then give to the dean and say, oh, and by the way, next time you have your meeting with the provost, or the next time that you have your meeting with the chancellor, And I will say too, one of the things that we've monopolized on is, and Steve mentioned this, is the international experiences, right? We have every other year an international field camp that we run in Italy. And so it's really nice to kind of be able to kind of talk that up, show some beautiful images from our field camps, put it all over the social media sites. And it's great then because if we're able to just kind of link up with the publicists, not only for the college, but for the university, we get some really great press there. The chancellor then starts to notice that we're getting a lot of interaction on social media. All of that is great. But we also have some kind of really creative ideas. We had an RV that was parked on campus for literally a year that hadn't been used. And so our outreach coordinator said, why don't we just make that into a mobile earth and environmental science lab? And so we nicknamed it the GeoBago. And so we've now got it tattooed right with our logo all over it. And we literally will drive around the state and bring not just geoscience and environmental science, but just Appalachian state science to all sorts of K through 12 schools throughout the country. So like little unique things like that, that then you can really showcase with some of the upper administration is really helpful.
That's interesting. And I'm curious, I mean, both of your programs are doing a lot to bolster the student experience, and clearly making big investments. I'm sort of curious, especially as we've come out of the pandemic, how is the dynamic of the student culture in your program, that organic culture, not necessarily just the fact, with all the other supports, is that impacting what you think is particularly on the retention side, but perhaps, some of the recruitment, some of the buzz on campus, and is there any perceived difference, say, from before the pandemic to what we're in now? And just curious on that, because, I think it's not necessarily in your control, but certainly something that, you're surfing on.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, Chris, I definitely see a secular change from before, pre-pandemic times and now, but not just with the undergraduates, it's sort of with everybody. I think across the board, there's a more of a hesitation, or maybe people are just out of practice with coming together and getting together and sharing experiences. It just feels like they're out of the habit. So we really try to create lots of events and spaces, as I said, as I pointed out, for our undergraduates to have a good experience. We can't make them come to them, but we also then try to, I think my Monday morning email, and I know that undergraduates read it, I think it really makes a difference. Every Monday, people come to look for it. People send me things. They want it to be in the email. And so when you start to generate this buzz that this is what we do, and look at the people that did it. I always say, here's what happened last week. I keep a web page of, last week today. It's like what all the activities. This takes me 4 or 5 hours every Sunday. I spend 4 or 5 hours of my Sunday doing a web page, making a job board, and writing an email to everybody. But it's become really important as a way to create culture in the department, and for people to have a foothold in how they can get news out to the rest of the department.
How about at App State?
I will reiterate almost everything that Steve just said. I used to do a weekly newsletter. I cut back to doing it once a month just because of the amount of time it was taking. I totally feel your pain, Steve, on the 4 to 5 hours every Sunday. We do it once a month, but yes, people are starting to they look forward to that information. They want to see what everybody's done. We've actually switched a little bit, and we now do a bunch of that through social media every week. So we're doing it that way, kind of pushing it to your cell phone, and then kind of saving the monthly newsletter for job opportunities, internships, things like that. But going back to your question about culture, Chris, I know that Steve does this at Tech, and we have it here. We've got our undergraduate research lab. We're one of the only departments on campus that has a crash zone, literally just for our majors, very similar to the photos that Steve showed earlier. It builds a sense of community. The students are in there. We provide computers, we provide printing, all of the the important things like coffee pots that that you have to have, right, to make it through undergrad. But really the students love it because they and we also they think that we're crazy at App State because we give our majors keys to the building. And so literally the students can come and go as they please. And if they want to work at 3 o'clock in the morning, look, that is foreign to me. apparently it is a thing for folks that are a lot younger than I am, and we want them to be able to do that, right? And so, so far, knock on wood, people understand that with great power comes great responsibility, and so they take care of this department, but they also build that sense of, hey, we're all here at 3 in the morning working on our structural geology cross sections that are due tomorrow because we left it to the last minute or whatever else, but definitely there is that sense of they call it the GES family, and I think they really love it. We even have a community building club. It started out kind of through some DEI efforts, but they literally have now taken upon themselves to start to have Halloween parties or, you know, cookouts, or, you know, they watch fun movies and things like that, just to kind of keep that sense of cohort together. Even though very different students coming in across 8 different degree tracks, they all still kind of have that same sense of community.
So we're getting lots of good questions coming in the chat. I know both of you have been poking at them, and I think, you know, looking at one, you've alluded in sort of the, you know, telling the stories of the successes and everything, like through the website, social media, things like that. What about that as a role within the recruiting new student awareness? And I think it's the two questions sort of combining here. Obviously, the students that aren't on campus, but is there a interconnect, like in your intro courses, things like that, that folks may be taking to also become more exposed to the department at large, whether through some of the media or other structures?
Yeah, so we definitely, you know, one of the things that we did a few years ago was revamp our website and try to make it and make sure that there were that it looked modern, that it was appealing, and that it was easy to navigate, especially for prospective students, both at the undergraduate and the graduate level, so that they could find information, they can find the check sheets. Not that hard to find the check sheets for the different options in our major through our website. And the student handbooks and things like that. So that, you know, I don't want to. We also have an outreach manager who works part-time for the department, and she is great with our social media. I don't want to claim that we are doing the best that we could, or that anyone else is doing better than anybody else on the social media side. I mean, I've been told that websites are passe, and that really we should be on Insta and Talk. Or, you know, that's it. That's all that Gen Z really cares about, and we're not doing much of that. We're still, you know, we're still a little bit behind. We had a Twitter presence. We're less, now that it's X and a dumpster fire, we're a little less enthusiastic about that. So, but the website is definitely important as a go-to resource.
One thing that we've been really successful in is definitely the social media. So I can help you out, Steve. You give me a call, I'll get you on my Insta pages. But the other thing too is that we've had a lot of luck. We are very present in the general education program at App State. So we teach a lot of what you might call service courses, right, to the kind of, I don't know if you call it core curriculum or gen ed or whatever else in your particular university. But we teach 5 separate intro courses that are kind of shades of 1101 or like your 101 course. We also have a course on dinosaurs. We also have a course on energy extraction in North Carolina and the Appalachian specifically. And so by doing that, you reach the 140 students a semester in each of those classes. And sometimes it's even more than that. I have a section of 250 sometimes in my kind of intro to physical geology course. And so that's great exposure right there, right? The students they don't know that they like earth science. They don't know that they like, you know, oceanography, but they take one of these classes. And we always try very hard to kind of weave in those successes, the things that we would be giving out to our majors. We also selectively pick some of those and send it out to those students that are in these intro courses to kind of show them, here's the sense of community that we have in GES, or here's what some of our students are doing. Here's some cool things you can get involved in. And so that's been really helpful for us too.
Building on that, it brings up reminds me of a story dealing with our colleagues and over in the physics community, where one of their strategies is a service course for STEM. A lot of those departments they go for direct recruitment in their intro courses, to the point where they're talking about, hey, we're identifying these 3 students, these are bright, they're a geology major, the chemistry major, we can make a sell and pull them over. I think traditionally a lot of folks have been, yeah, we get the exposure, but are any of your programs, being, I'll say, more forthright in those intro courses to say, no, you particular have some interest, you should probably think about it, or is that, an anathema, within the culture of the institution for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Chris. So we do, I mean, in a general sense, we also teach a lot of service courses. Someone asked in the chat whether students from other departments are required to take any of our courses, and only the civil engineers are required to, and the mining engineers are required. So we teach some service courses for engineers that are required, but all of our other, our Age of Dinosaurs, Mission to the Planets, Intro to Earth Science, Earth's Natural Hazards, those are pathways classes. They fulfill the science requirement in our Gen Ed curriculum. But it is important for us to try as much as we can to put, I'll just say, dynamic individuals in those classrooms, because we do get a lot of, we do manage to get a lot of majors in from the sides. It's not as many as we get in new freshmen. I mean, really, most of that growth that you saw in our chart is coming from new freshmen admits. But we do now, in terms of the more direct approach that you're asking about, Chris, I tried that a few years ago in the early stages when we were trying to turn around our decline. And I went into a couple of Gen Ed classes and gave a little spiel, a little pitch about our department. And I just didn't feel good about it somehow. And it didn't feel quite, it felt a little too heavy-handed. It felt a little too obvious. And I just felt like, and maybe that it could turn people off. I mean, I do have that effect on people sometimes, I guess. But I think we just leave it to if we put really dynamic, enthusiastic, geoscience professors in front of a classroom, it's going to happen. The students that I think take an interest or get that spark, it will happen. I will say one thing that's happening at Virginia Tech, which we are concerned about with the Gen Ed, and this is I think a pandemic effect. Students really have become aware of online courses, and they want more online options. And we do not see the same recruiting effect from an online intro class as when we get that in-person experience with a dynamic person at the front of the room. And there are some courses at Virginia Tech that are fulfilling the science requirements that are, because it's online, they're growing. I mean, one of them has a cap of 1,500 students in one section of a class. This is in one of the engineering departments. And they're starting to suck up other, core SCHs from other departments like ours. So our service course enrollments are decreasing, I think, partly because of that. So I don't know if other people are experiencing that as well.
No, it's interesting. Have anything to add, Cindy?
I was responding feverishly to questions in the chat. I apologize.
No, it's good. And actually, I'd like to, please open it up for, it's a very active chat session. And you guys are really good multitaskers, since carrying on the conversation and doing this. But I would like to open this up for anybody, if you would like to join on and in the conversation actively. Probably I think the easiest thing, Leila, is if they raise their hands and we can unmute them, I believe. So I wanted to pick up on something you brought up, Steve, about meeting with prospective students and their parents, and that was an experience, that was a positive experience I had when I was looking at colleges. My father dragging me around to talk to those department chairs, figure out what this really is, because he was skeptical about geology. He actually learned more and was supportive by the end. And I tortured my poor children to do that, and ended up being a good thing. I guess the question is it a formal kind of invite, or is it just if you got a proactive, parent, do you try to structure this? Hey, if you're interested, we really do want to sit down and talk with you. Is it part of sort of a prospective student program effort, or is it just more organic?
Yeah, we are thinking about having, and we're going to pilot later this semester for the first time, a sort of be a geologist day that would be more organized, that is associated with one of the open house events where students are coming to campus. I've been a little bit leery about doing that because I'm really worried about having it fall flat if there's only 3 students and their parents, and it might feel, like there's not a lot of energy. So far I've just been doing it when I hear, when a prospective student reaches out, usually to our academic advisor, and then she will tell me, hey, Steve, here, these people are going to be on campus. Are you free anytime that Friday? And I always try to make time on my schedule. I've been leery about, and this connects to something someone else asked in the chat. I've been leery of doing things that I am afraid are going to take a lot of time and effort for maybe not so much payoff. And that is how I've been feeling about visiting high schools so far. I will be happy to be proven wrong on this, but to me, going, especially because we're in a rural part of Southwest Virginia, it's not a densely populated area. So going to many high schools means lots of travel. So you're talking about a half a day or a day of a couple of faculty members and students to go someplace, give a presentation, and it just doesn't feel like that's a lot of bang for the buck. Although our undergraduate program director is really keen, and he's very dynamic. He's very keen to try it. So we'll see.
We need to get you a GeoVago, Steve.
I love that idea. I may just steal it, Cindy.
Anytime, happy to help. Chris, your question about like meeting with students and all that, we haven't done a whole lot in terms of going to the high schools either. But I will say, somebody asked, I think it was maybe Catherine or something in the chat, asked something about reaching out to local high schools. Our outreach program coordinator does a lot of that. Literally, we have materials that you can loan out and give. We have workshops for high school teachers. So rather than us going there, that's one way that we kind of maximize on the bang for the buck. Marta Turan has been able to get a bunch of NSF funding to hold workshops for teachers so that we get the teachers to come to us. We then kind of send our message and then they bring it back to their school. So that's been really, really helpful.
That's good. So Aaron Wood had a great question, and certainly one that I think is important. We often recruit based off the outdoor experience. I always say it's the REI look, and it is a big turnoff to a lot of students, and it is a big turnoff to a lot of diverse populations. It's particularly given your guys' locations, you're sort of sitting in it. So how do you address that issue and those prospective students that maybe don't have an interest in having a outdoor career necessarily, and convey the excitement of all the geoscience opportunities that don't necessarily require that?
Steve, can I jump in on this one? Because I'm super excited to share. Thanks, Chris. Absolutely. So we did a couple of things. One, we made sure that we revamped our webpage so that not every photo on the webpage is this beautiful vista and people outside and glaciers in Alaska and Italy and all of that. We reminded students that there is a huge part of geoscience that has to do with laboratory analysis, high-tech equipment, and we have a lot of that stuff here too. So we definitely just marketing, packaging, putting that on our social media pages and our website. But also too, we've even developed now a new degree track that shows that there can be more material science, equipment, skills building, all of that sort of stuff. So we're actually just rolling that out next fall, that we've got now kind of just emphasizing on the research equipment capability. And we now also have 2 quantitative degree tracks, quantitative geoscience and quantitative environmental science, to really stress, hey, it doesn't all have to be field work, right? There's a lot of stuff that happens behind computers and drones and whatever else. And if you have that, mathematical kind of applied geoscience mind, we have a home for you for that.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that. We do the same. I mean, we try to be, I don't think we always succeed, but we try to be very conscious of not always just showing the outdoor hiking photos in our materials. We're also connecting with the data science. There's a big data science effort at Virginia Tech and a lot of expertise here. And so we're connecting with that. We've developed a 5-year terminal master's program where students can get a geoscience degree, but a master's in data science as well. And so we're trying to emphasize those opportunities as well. But I think it's a really important point, and I'm glad that you brought up, Chris, that there is an asymmetry in the impacts on certain diverse populations that don't come to geoscience from an outdoor experience perspective.
So, and I'm curious, sort of in the same vein, Steve, I know from previous conversations we've had, you've mentioned that Virginia Tech has large student catchments from the DC metro area and the Tidewater area, so, and I don't know with Appalachian State, but, in your enrollment and especially your retention, are there different issues when you're dealing with sort of students that are from more distant locations? They're not rolling home every weekend kind of thing. Does that play into the factor, or is that just sort of organic within the school itself?
I think we definitely, because you're absolutely right, Chris, I think probably the majority of undergraduates at Virginia Tech are not from within an hour or two of Blacksburg, Virginia, right? They're really from Northern Virginia and the Tidewater area. So yeah, we do see that play out in, it's part of the whole student experience loneliness sort of thing. There is a loneliness and mental health epidemic among students, undergraduates and graduates. I think that's a national problem. I think that's only exacerbated by students that are distant and can't get home. So I don't know that we're doing anything particularly for those people, but just trying to create that good student experience so they at least, I don't like to say we're a family, because I think, your family is your family, but I like to say we're a strong community in the department, and we want them to feel like they're part of the community here.
So Cynthia, it's a nice comment. You want to talk about that a bit more?
I just kind of put it into the chat here too, that we're not a commuter school by any means. You come to the mountains and a lot of folks stay in the mountains, but we do have a lot of transfer students and a lot of first generation students. And so we have developed within the department point people, literally, like we have a transfer student mentor, a faculty member who was a transfer student himself and definitely has kind of adopted that as his passion, and he has a mixer with all those students every semester and tries to kind of get them to know each other, because it's hard, right? They're going to be in all these disparate courses, they may not know each other, and it's a great community building thing there. But we also have a first generation mentor too, and she does the same thing with our first gen students. So we have a really good kind of institutional reporting office where I can actually look at all of the students that are my transfer students or all the students that are first gen, and we're able to kind of target some emails to them and say, here's a great event that you might be interested in. So yeah.
So we're almost up on our hour, but I think this is a really good last question from so when you were revamping and revising your curriculum, what were your decisions about required field camp and extended field courses, which obviously are challenges, logistically and socially and economically for a lot of students, and how does that play into the curriculum and your successes or areas where you have to put a lot more effort into?
Yeah, so for us, when we did the curriculum revision, we didn't do the full Dave Moak matrix and really work through that, because I wanted to succeed and not get bogged down. So we sort of did the structure first, and then we're filling in some of those touch points as we go along. But we did do a matrix where we made sure in each option there were certain skills that were touched with courses that we could identify. And we hear from our alumni through AGI webinars all the time that field skills that's super important to future employers. And so that is something we've wanted to maintain and strengthen. We require field camp, but we don't teach it. We teach a required intro to field observations class that all of our students take in all 6 options. They can get field camp credit if they do the study abroad, because there are field activities in that. But we spend a lot of time, and our academic advisor spends a lot of time advising students where there are field camps that they can go to. And we're also flexible. It doesn't have to be a 6-week geology in the mountains of Utah kind of thing. It can be a hydrology field camp or a near surface, if they want to go to the SAGE experience, and that can count as field camp, right? So we try to be flexible and meet them with their interests.
Yeah, outstanding.
We did interesting thing too with our field camp, Chris, just to kind of throw this out here too, because we understand that 6 weeks in a summer is super challenging, especially for students who either have to take summer courses in order to finish their degree. This goes back to our transfer students, or who have to have a job and work because they're paying their way through school. We've actually kind of got away from that, traditional, you have to have 6 weeks, 6 credits all in the same summer. We've separated now our field requirements into 3 and 3. So it is it's less expensive. You can actually separate it now over 2 summers if you need. And it also then is easier for me to encourage faculty to try to teach this, right? Because to be able to pitch, hey, who wants to give up 6 weeks in their summer? I'm able to say, hey, is anybody interested in developing maybe a local 3-credit, 3-hour, 3-week, field experience? And so we're actually starting to see that a lot more faculty are getting engaged in these kind of field courses. They're not just doing, yes, let's go hiking to Grandfather Mountain. They're saying, hey, what if I did a GIS component? What if I did an environmental field methods type thing? So we're trying to be creative in how we could get students the field camp requirement in ways that is more accessible, more approachable to the student.
How does that requirement, curious, differ between your geology program and your environmental science program?
So field camp is still traditionally required for our geology students, and a lot of that is because we do see that through like ASBOG, things like that, they do want to have students see field camp requirements and things like that, but it is not required for our environmental science majors, although we do have an environmental science field methods course. It's only at the 1 or 2 credit level, and it's at the sophomore level, but it's giving them those types of skills, but it's built into the curriculum. So it's during the semesters, it's not a summer thing. And we certainly do have that ability that if a student does find an environmental science field camp, hydro, groundwater, SAGE is a great example I heard you say earlier, we can certainly sub that in for a requirement too.
Outstanding. Outstanding. Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and this has been an outstanding conversation. Really appreciate your insights and experiences, and want to hand over to Pranoti for some final words here.
Yes, so thank you very much. This was phenomenal discussion, and we so very much appreciate you taking the time on a Friday afternoon. And thanks to all the folks who also attended. And so, and Steve, thank you for being willing to answer questions, and you too, Cynthia. So if you came in late and you didn't catch this before, a recording of today's webinar will be available. Please share it with your department, light the fire, make it happen. And if you're curious, if you're a department chair and you wanna be part of this community, please feel free to contact me. I would love to add you to the Heads and Chairs community. We also have an annual department, like a Heads and Chairs workshop that happens at the AGU meeting. And if you could go to the last slide, we have about 5 spots left. So if you want to join that workshop, let me know. And if you missed any of the webinars from earlier this year, please check them out on AGI's webinars page. So we hope to have a new series of webinars next year. So please come back and join us and be part of the conversation. So thank you very much and have a great weekend, everybody.